Monday, July 29th, and we're here for our third look at our county budget and who's in charge.
I'll start with, the police packet that was presented last week. I did look at that, only from a budget standpoint, and, it says at the bottom on the first page, our proposed budget say 43,785 over fiscal year 2019, which is not accurate. We did not spend that 90,000, we pulled that 90,000 out, so it's actually about $46,000 more than the adopted 2019. And I didn't look at the number for 2020 because we have to have vehicles. I'm not willing to propose a budget to you that's unrealistic, that doesn't reflect what we actually need. So I didn't see anything that I would change in the current.
So
Police
does that put the
budget.
police at 836, 636?
It's whatever Jenny has in her packet, because we didn't make any of those changes,
Yeah.
correct? So it's whatever's in your packet, that's what we're staying with.
All right, continue on.
And then, on the revenue side, I wanted to talk a little bit, about Gina's here, we wanted to talk to you guys about, the building department fees. We've been, you know, if it's costing you more to do something than you're making, then that's a hobby. It's not actually, a service we're getting compensated for, so I'll give you an example, a roofing permit. We charge $44. Well, first of all, let me just say that we haven't increased those fees in probably 15 years or more. A roofing permit is $44. We can't even process that permit for $44. That doesn't take into account the inspector going out there, doing the work that they have to do, doing a subsequent inspection if it fails the first time. So all we charge is $44 for that service. And it's costing, at this point, EPCI, a lot more than the $44, and that's just an example of one. I think Jenny and Adrian can both speak to the $50 variance fee. We spend a lot more than $50 on those variances. So I think when you look at the situation that the city is in, one of the first things we need to do is we need to look at our fees and services and make sure we're recovering our costs. It's not about making money. We don't want to make any money off of these fees, but we want to make sure we recover our costs. And we would like to take a detailed look at those fees and bring back some recommendations to you guys on what those fees are actually costing the city, because we are losing money. I looked at Bay County. I know Gina's looked at Port St. Joe, Gulf County fees. Let me give you an example. For a variance in Bay County, and I'm not proposing that we go to this fee, but their fee is $1,200. Not proposing we go to $1,200, I'm just saying there's a big disparity in what we charge for a variance and what our surrounding neighbors are charging for a variance. Gulf County's about,
They're $1,250, and City of Port St. Joe's $300.
so just to give you some examples, and we're $50, which doesn't really even cover staff's time to process that. It doesn't cover, and often we have to engage Nick on some of these when they're a little more complicated up front. So we're here today, Gina's here today to say we really need to look at those fees because we are losing money currently on that. So that's kind of on the revenue side. We'll talk to you guys about that.
So y'all want to oppose what we should start charging?
We'd like to bring back a recommendation on what it's costing us
To cover costs.
to cover our costs.
We're gonna get a lot of variances requests.
Which are costly to process.
Well, maybe we can change our process so that it's not as costly.
We can't change the notification requirements, we can't change, the staff's time that it takes to review, we can't change cause essentially, the building department, you assist with filling out that application.
Right.
And then usually there's some back and forth on, depending on the nature of the variance. And again, there are times when we have to engage Nick to get answers. So it varies on the level of effort, but I don't know what part of that process we can change.
Well, maybe I should say, let's please be cognizant of that there's going to be an awful lot of variance requests, just as we have seen.
So at this rate, we're gonna lose a lot of money.
Well, we're very aware of the variances because we're handling a lot of them and writing the reports and researching.
My
each
point
and
is
one
that
of
this,
those.
it seems that it's the same request and same information we had before the storm. Now that the storm's over, we want to go up to some, from $50 to $500.
Why do you suppose everybody else charges a lot more than we do?
Well, I've said that if we had done this before the storm, we probably won't be having, we wouldn't have had near as many. Now, all of a sudden, we're gonna get a boatload of them, and it's just, all I'm saying is, be aware of what it does take, and if we can change something that doesn't take as much time, I'd rather do that than charge a big fee, because we're gonna have a lot of variances. And if we'd have done it on October 10th, I wouldn't be saying that, because we wouldn't be having very many, as y'all remember. We seldom had any, because they were mostly turned away at the door because they said, look, don't apply for this, you aren't gonna get it.
Right, and Mayor, I
But
think.
now it's not.
And I think that's a good point. I mean, we were losing money before the storm on a variance, but we didn't have that many, so it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't really elevated to the level that it is now, but when we're seeing 5 and 6 a month and the time and effort that is involved, Gina and I are working currently on all those processes. We met with Nick on Friday. We're trying to go through and streamline that. And we can talk a little bit more about that at the end of the budget discussion. We wanted to talk a little bit more about that with you guys. But just from a revenue standpoint and focusing on the budget, we do think that we need to look at those fees.
Probably too. If I wanted a variance and it was $50, I might not look at my variance as close as I would at $250 or $300. I'd, take that chance and do it. I think with any business, when I was in business, if I were losing money at something, I either quit doing it or went up on it. So I don't have a problem with looking at it and coming up with the best case scenario that we can come up with that's fair.
Well, I would wish that y'all would come back and let us know what the cost of the city to do this. And then that way we can be more informed, So, I definitely don't wanna try to gouge a citizen, but at the same time, I like to be the cost of what we're doing anyway.
I mean, because the reality is, right now the situation is all the taxpayers are picking up the tab for variances because the $50 isn't covering it, but that cost has to come from somewhere. So it's either you have the people who apply who are actually using the service, pay for that fee and pay the appropriate fee to cover the cost, or everybody in town, whether they apply for a variance or not, it's gonna be reflected in their ad valorem. The cost has to come from somewhere.
Gina, can you give us a cost of all what those places are as far as how much the variances are?
Well, really, the only thing that we're ever involved in, the only city we're ever involved in variances is Fort St. Joe and Apalachicola also. Because everywhere else, we just strictly do building department services, not anything to do with LDR. So variances and replats and things like that, that's city related. Typically, we only do Florida Building Code in every other city. So, but yeah, I can bring you what we do in Apalachicola and
I
Fort
like
St.
to
Joe.
do all that.
And we can actually get those for you. That would be staff's job to get those for you for the surrounding cities, to get you their rates, so we can provide that to you.
Well, the video would make any judgment on, I think we need to see all that, especially how much it costs for the city to do.
Right, and so that's our question today, if you guys are okay with that, because we didn't wanna do all that work if you weren't interested.
But not building fees then.
We're talking about any
Well,
of that.
building fees also, we have currently we're charging what we started charging in 2004 for all building fees. And we have a new fee schedule that's been adopted everywhere else that we do building services.
Well, the reason I said, Bo was asked about his fee schedule when we redid the thing, when we redid the contract, and he reviewed it.
Well, that's kind of why we're back here again, is because we never executed that contract. That contract was never executed and these fees were never adopted. And that was
Really?
2016, I believe, is that right?
Yeah.
Tanya? I think
It
so.
was in 2016, I don't know, I wasn't here,
Yeah.
if we ever did that. But yeah, I was on the council at the time when we talked about doing it. But I
I
don't
wasn't
think those
either.
fees ever I left at the end of May.
Yeah.
I know that it was reviewed,
Yep,
I thought it, I mean, every opportunity was given for that to be done, so,
Yeah.
but if it never was adopted, that's
right.
obviously a different story.
I left in May and I think they were gonna do it during that following budget cycle and apparently it just never got done.
Never got done, okay.
We.
Well, anyway, we ought to look at it,
Okay.
we ought to look at it.
Alright, perfect, okay, that was,
Just for information, Callaway is $250, Panama City's for variances. Panama City has a staggered approach to variances depending on the project, but they start at 200 and go up, so everybody's higher than us.
Okay, so, back on the budget.
Okay.
You have more?
the only other, I don't think, Jenny, we have any other major,
The only thing that I changed on my side was we got the final state number for the communication service tax.
it went down quite a bit.
Yes, it went down quite a bit. I think we budgeted 43,000 and it went down to 8,700.
What page?
It's on page 3, about the 7th item down, communication service tax,
It went to what?
to that $8,712.
Okay, that's what it went to. Okay, you fixed it, okay, got it.
So over $30,000
Good.
hit. And then we still have to decide what we're gonna do with our match portion. So those are the remaining outstanding questions. We have to have a number to, the county by Thursday. I know that, at least Callaway, they're responding with their max millage until they work through it, because you can't go up after Thursday, but you can come down, so they're taking the approach, let's look at the max and then let's look at the max and then whittle that down to where we need to be, because once we submit something on Thursday, it's locked. You can't go any higher, and we have so many outstanding questions right now.
I don't see any problem with that. I don't know if we have to go to a maximum, but we can go,
I would, go ahead, Chair, sorry.
go ahead.
I would do the max. I would rather present something realistic. From a citizen standpoint, I'd rather have it figured in there and know what it's gonna be and know the situation we're in, and, if we could whittle on it, that'd be good. There's some people that think we're at 6.8, whatever, and they're gonna be disappointed. If we don't go ahead and figure the max, if we come in there at 7 something or 8 and then have to go to 12, 13, whatever, then I'd be real disappointed as a citizen. I'd just like to know what it's gonna be, or can be.
Well, I understand that if, say we put 7, we can't go
That's,
up, right?
that's
But you
correct.
can come down.
But you can come down, so if you go in at a higher number, you can always come down, once you work through.
You have a suggestion?
I don't know what our max is, 9 maybe.
I was thinking it was 9.3, we only looked at
9
one.
something, I
Yeah,
looked at
it
it
was-
once.
So even 9, if
9 even.
9 even would be a good start, and then start reducing it. We're pretty confident we're gonna get the community disaster loan, and that's 1.3.
1.322.
1.322. That has to go towards operating expenses. It cannot go towards your FEMA match, so that would, some of the,
Police
if
cars,
we get that, that'll help offset.
equipment?
No.
Operating expenses, your day-to-day. But then that frees up
Something
that
else.
money that we can redistribute. And that's, 1.3. We're also hearing, and I shared this with the mayor on Friday, that the state has this $25 million pot of money that they're wanting to help, some of the local cities, and, they've asked us for our thoughts on what they could do with that money. Again, it has to be ad valorem related, it can't be FEMA match, it can't be equipment, it has to be operating expense, related. We've got a couple of ideas where, we may wanna, request some of that money, but that's all up in the air. We can request it, we don't know if we'll get it or how much we'll get. I feel comfortable that the city of Mexico Beach will get some of that 25 million, because how can the state not give us something and give other areas something? I just don't know how much that will be, but we're gonna fight for every penny that we believe we should get. So just those unknowns, and I understand they're not gonna make a decision until late August, early September on the 25 million, so we don't have answers. So, some things coming in, that you guys are gonna have to consider. We just don't have the answers at this point in July.
So you pay suggestions at 9 mills?
I would say start there and work our way down. I mean, we wanna get it as low as we can get it, but we don't want to end up where we need more and now we can't plan for more. Nick, did you have any thoughts on?
No, I think that's probably the only approach you can take with so many unknowns, and just also keep in mind the higher millage for the vast majority of the properties in town is gonna apply to a lower valuation, so they usually will balance out somewhat. The folks that are gonna really pay more tax are a handful of people that didn't sustain a lot of damage from the storm.
Mm-hmm.
What rationale would we use to go to 9, just because that's the highest we can go?
Well, we've got, right now, we're looking at almost a $6 million match for year one. That's the rationale there, and unless we can find ways to offset that in year one.
Well, we do have offsets according to your paperwork.
We do, but the donated resources at $3.5 million, that's the very end of the line. FEMA doesn't apply those until the project, till
Well,
year
but
one.
we aren't trying to pay $6 million back in 1 year.
We gotta pay it. I mean, it's gotta come from somewhere. The contractors, this is work that we're doing, that we have to pay. It's not work we can defer.
But my point is 9 mills ain't gonna do that.
It's not gonna do that,
So-
but that's the max you can go. You can't go any
That's
higher.
why I'm for going up, I'm for 8, but I'm not for 9. Cause I don't see, I mean, we've got a budget here, I don't think anything on this paper's gonna change at 3.3 million for our general fund budget, and that's at 7.44.
Well, the general fund has to, and Nick, keep me straight on this, but I think that we've gotta incorporate that match somewhere in that general fund budget, correct? I mean, that's money we've gotta pay out.
You have to have a plan for it, whether it's borrowed money or tax revenue. You can't just be left out of the budget.
And even if we borrow it, we have to reflect it in the budget.
Right.
The source of the money and how we're,
Do we know how much 8 mills or 9 mills would be?
That's 317,000 for every 1 mil. So you're adding 2 mills, which would bring it to 634,000, roughly, from 704 to 9.
600?
630,000. That's quick math. One mill's worth 317,000.
new construction is, certainly happening. We're seeing, new plans every week, but that's not gonna be reflected next year. We won't see any of that tax revenue until 2021.
How much you say 1 mill was?
317,000.
provided with the rollback rate yet?
Yes,
Remind me what that is.
I don't know on top of my head. 7 something.
It's not at 8. It's 7 something. I saw it, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Well, I don't have a problem budgeting for some. I'm not for the max. I think that in this first year, we have businesses that don't have a business. We have people that don't have a home. We have people who don't have homes who are relying on rental income that don't have, in essence, their business. And, Triumph's making us whole on I just don't wanna advertise it max, whatever that is. I don't see that there's anything to be gained from that unless the council is thinking that's what we're gonna do, is the max. I don't know, but when you say we're gonna whittle it down, there is no whittling it down. Other than the payback. How much? 200,000? 600,000? I mean, it's just a number we pick out that we add to the tax roll, whatever that is, whatever that number sounds good to everyone. So, I'm good with looking at 8. And, I'm not even really interested in putting in money on a payback basis that's really significant. I don't think people can afford it this year. And we gotta give a chance for 2021 to get here, see where our tax base, what kind of revenue we come up with.
Mayor, that all sounds good, but the city's in dire circumstances right now, and we don't, we've gotta pay those bills. We can't not pay those bills.
I understand.
So what
9
are
mills,
we-
I don't
it's
say it
not-
to sound good, I say it because it's real, and it's what's happening out there when we're expecting our citizens to pay up. We gotta give them a chance to get their feet under them and generate some money. I don't think we can just, the first year after the storm, say, boom, here's what you gotta pay. We've got problems. I know we have financial problems. But I'm speaking as a citizen, as a taxpayer, and as a council member. I think it's important that we give people an opportunity, like you just said, they're coming back. Well, we don't know what our tax base will, grow next year. And I don't say it to sound good or for that I say it because I think that's what people out there, they're hurting, and we need to be as cognizant of that, of what we can expect from them.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and we have talked about that. I am a taxpayer and a citizen as well, and we've talked about it, we've agonized over it, but here's the reality. If it's not in the budget, we're talking about a special assessment. We can't just not pay those bills. We've either gotta borrow the money, we've gotta figure this one out, we've gotta borrow it.
The point is,
long-term.
Tanya, 9 mills isn't gonna fix that.
It's not gonna fix
So-
it, but
so that's
8
not-
certainly isn't gonna fix it. I
Well,
mean,
9 ain't gonna do any more than 8.
I
9 ain't gonna do any more than 8.
I would just say, then we're looking at a special assessment. I mean, because we've
Well,
got
I
to
think
find
if
money from
everybody knows
somewhere.
that, the council will have to decide what they wanna do. And I'm just saying how I feel about it. I don't see any reason to max out on the first year as if that's gonna fix, it's not. It's not gonna, will it pay a little more, $300,000 difference, and it may? Yeah, it'll definitely pay somebody a little something, but it's,
It'll pay the bank interest if we borrow money.
Well,
I mean, what's the situation with us borrowing money?
they are meeting with banks today and tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Nick I guess there's a conference call today with the bond counsel, trying to pull that together with the law firm, and, just trying to move as quickly as we can. We're waiting on them, the ball's in their court.
What we need to decide is the millage rate so Jenny can pass that on to the counties. It should be posted. That's where we are. We see our budget of 3.31 million for the general fund, at 7.044. And then whatever we want to add to it so that everyone's comfortable, whatever that number is on the millage side.
I see no problem with going to 9. I mean, it's a problem. I'm one of those people who's gonna pay more because my house is barely damaged compared to Bobby's there. But I don't own a lot of property, I only own a house. And the people that I have talked with expects it to be much higher, whether they've got money to pay it or not, because of the problems we've got and the fact that we need to borrow money to get out of the hole that we're in. I talked with somebody the other day, we owed $200 and something thousand. He's a small-time operator compared to what's going on, and that's 2 months overdue. And there's probably more people like that, and some big ones.
Who is that?
I'm not gonna tell you who it was.
Well,
Jenny, who is it that we owe $200,000 to?
We don't have anything 2 months overdue.
Okay, well, then there you go. All right, so
It may
that's
have
not
been paid at the end of
I
last
think this
week.
person is 2 months overdue, at least, or maybe he was lying to you. Or
Well,
maybe
if it
we're
was
not
early
gonna-
last week.
So if you don't know who it is and we don't have.
I know exactly who
Well, we
it is.
have an accountant right here saying that we don't have anybody 2 months
We
overdue.
can look at it after the.
I don't understand.
You don't wanna-
Come here and you make those kind of statements and we should be able to back
Well, we
that
can't
up.
buy any more sand, let's put it that way.
He's called this morning,
Who's called this morning?
Taunton,
Who?
Taunton for some.
Okay.
We get it, we get that from the contractor, we're buying that direct.
Right,
okay, I
which
can
was the
see,
cheapest bid, by the way.
I can see both of y'all. But what we got to really remember is we got a lot more citizens living here that on fixed income that might not be able to afford this. I don't know, I say, I'm leaning more towards the loan than we are trying to milk a citizen with a fixed income that cannot afford anything extra put on there and is still trying to get their house redone or patched up where they shouldn't even be living in it. So I guess I'm leaning more towards the 8 mil than the 9. And us try to find something to do instead of trying to hurt the majority, not majority, a good many of these citizens that are still here. There's still people fighting insurance, there's still people that don't have insurance, that's trying to patch up here or there. We're supposed to be representing our citizens, and I think we need to work as hard as we can to, try to take less out of their pockets. So I lean more towards the 8 mil.
Well, that doesn't mean we're going to go to 8 mil.
I know that. But I wouldn't want to go over it.
Okay, I mean, we can open the floor for a motion, more discussion. We can't leave here today without giving the clerk a number.
Okay, I'll make a motion that, we put, millage at 8 mils.
Motion for 8 mils, is there a second?
Second.
Do I have a second to advertise the millage rate for Mexico Beach General Fund at 8 mills. Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
No.
Mr. Putnam?
No. Okay, we'll work with 8 mills, there's no reason to have any more budget meetings. I mean, until we have the, I can't remember the schedule, I always get that filed up, but we have 2 public hearings, I know.
September.
September, so we'll consider the budget as we have. Do we need anything on the enterprise funds? Is there anything to discuss?
Well, we've got to incorporate the match in here, we've got to put that money somewhere, so I'm looking, you can't, as Nick
Well, aren't you
said,
gonna have a line item?
that's what, but it's not gonna balance.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a line item at the 8.
Well, it
Yeah.
never was gonna balance.
Right, so
It was
we're,
never gonna balance.
I understand,
Okay,
so,
well, when you say that, it makes it
well,
seem,
we've got to offset it, are we offsetting it by a loan, is that how we wanna
well,
offset
we
it?
don't know. I mean, how do we know what the loan numbers are gonna come to? We can put a line item in, when you say it has to match what number?
We're gonna have to put in a line item just to make up the difference between 7044 and 8 to balance our budget at 8.
Of course,
But that's all we'll have to do for now because
yeah.
we don't
Well,
know.
what's in essence, without a line item, it's gonna show an excess.
It's gonna need a line
So-
item created.
Okay, so here's what I'm trying to say, and what I've been trying to say, maybe I'm not doing a good job articulating it, we have about $6 million in match that we're gonna have to pay out. We'll get that back eventually, because we have $3.5 million right now just in donated resources. But FEMA doesn't do that until the end of the line. We're also looking at a 5% match, when it's not 5% until the storm hits 2.8 billion.
When you're
So-
saying 6 million in match, do you need, $6 million of costs that we need to pay now? 'Cause
For
match-
work that is either complete or underway currently.
But is that the full cost of the invoice? That's not our small
That's
percent?
that's our percentage.
Okay.
So we have to account for that somewhere in the budget, so,
But don't we need to account for the full cost so that we can then attempt to get reimbursement?
well, the full cost is roughly $60 million or more. So that's, I mean, but that's what I'm struggling with, how do you reflect that? You can't, it has to be reflected by law, we have to show it somewhere in the budget. We could show the full amount, and then the FEMA reimbursement, the state, the estimated FEMA reimbursement, the estimated state reimbursement, and then what the city's match is, we could show that on the budget, and then we could just show the difference that we just moved over from the, increased millage, towards that. We've got the community disaster loan, some other things, sources of revenue that will come in. But then whatever's left, we could just show that as a loan, borrowed money, to offset it.
I didn't know we had to show it in its entirety in this budget, so if that is the rule slash law,
We don't need to show it if we're not gonna spend it, but if it's already been spent or we're going to spend it, it needs to be shown.
I know, but when you're dealing with the FEMA reimbursement side of that, I guess you just take like this sheet you gave us and use it as an attachment to the budget.
Well, or we actually just add those line items in the budget.
Or add.
But the shortfall is gonna be made up from loan proceeds, that's what we're saying here. The difference will be a loan proceed.
Unknown.
Yeah, you would show the true cost to the city prior to reimbursements as an expense. You could show the FEMA reimbursement as an anticipated revenue. It may not come this fiscal year, but it hopefully would. And they would largely offset one another.
Okay, I think we know what we need to do, so we'll put something together, add that to the budget.
More importantly, well, not more important, but when it comes to the hearings, we need to be able to that we all understand what it is.
Yeah, I think we need another, we're gonna need another budget
And probably
workshop
so,
prior
yeah,
to.
probably
the
so, prior to
public
the
hearings.
I agree. I agree. Okay, enterprise funds, is there anything to do there?
There is rate changes. We did talk about them, didn't we?
Yeah.
One of the.
Well, they were minute, what we talked
Yeah.
about.
9 cents a thousand, 14 cents a
Those are
thousand.
pass-throughs,
No, they're not pass-throughs, they're to make us whole with the
they're
lack of
not,
users.
they're not the wholesale changes,
Mm-mm.
water change,
No.
sewer change.
We don't have any
I
numbers from the county.
heard those
yet.
numbers, no,
They haven't given them to us?
have not received them.
Really?
Usually we have them by now. Let me, I'll follow up with the county.
Yeah, I think they're still trying to figure
They
out.
probably
as
could,
well.
yeah, well, they're,
Everybody's behind.
Mayor, can I just update you on our FEMA meeting on Friday?
Please do.
Give an update.
Please do.
So we've been continuing to meet with FEMA and the state to try to figure out what's going on. We have about $3.3 million of that very first expedited debris bill that we haven't been reimbursed. We now have that ball rolling with some help from the new branch director with FEMA. So that is in works now. We hope to see that money, that 3.3, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. By the end of August, we should see that. So that's gonna help us. That's 3.3 million that we've already paid out that we haven't been reimbursed for. Then for the category A, which is the debris bill, we have about $29 million in bills sitting there currently. Typically, you pay that up front before you can get reimbursement. In our meeting on Friday, the way that they're gonna do that is they're only gonna sample 20% of that $29 million. And if those supporting documents they're able to validate those at 100, that 20%, they're able to validate those and ensure the integrity of those invoices, then they're gonna pay out, to my understanding, 100%. That's what
What
they
it said.
said. Give us that 100%, but we've still got to, before we can close out that particular item, we've got to show proof of payment. So we'll be able to get that money, start paying some of that.
now the
and
state's
then-
gonna do that.
Well, here's the wild card they talked about. They said that FEMA's comfortable with that. The state has to agree to pay us out that money up front. They were gonna take that back to Jared Moskowitz, the DEM director. In the past, Florida hasn't been willing to do that because so much gets de-obligated at the end, and then the state ends up holding a lot of that. But our data's clean. Atkins is doing a good job reconciling it. They told us we're in much better shape than the county from our reconciliation process. So they felt comfortable that they could sell it to the director to pay that out at 100%, but that's still the unknown. Worst case, I think it's gonna be 50%
Which one
of the
was
29 million.
Missed them in the restroom.
The category A debris bill, they're calling it a reduced administrative burden, not expedited, they don't use that word. And all it does is it goes ahead and gives us the money up front, lets us pay some of those bills while we continue to reconcile the remaining 80% of all those thousands and thousands of tickets and photographs and.
And if that does happen, while that just sounds real good, there is a downside to that. In that we don't get, that puts on, it's gonna slow everything else down.
That's correct.
Sometimes bird in hand's worth two in the bush.
And keep in mind, that's the dredging, we've got about a $30 million bill on dredging, estimated cost on dredging, and those bills are just now starting to trickle in. I think we have one from Crowderville. So those will be coming in as well, and they're not offering any type of reduced administrative burden on the dredging.
Bottom line is, Fannie has been on spot trying to deal with FEMA. But we are truly in a financial crisis because of the reimbursement program, and all these folks that were, or at least to me, not maybe to her or to even y'all, I don't know that. I've dealt with a lot of people over the last 6 weeks that we're gonna help you, we're gonna help you. Hell, I'm convinced that we are who we are, and we are on this island by ourselves. We've taken a lot of pictures, shook a lot of hands, and it, we are, I think, truly swimming by ourselves. And it has changed my perspective considerably of the financial condition, at least those around us, meaning Bay County and those people that are in that position to offer help. Nobody's I mean, you know, they're willing to walk with us, but they're not gonna buy us lunch. Just not gonna do it. And it's a difficult situation at best. And I don't know what any of this that we talked about on the borrowing side is gonna produce. But it may be, and I say this because of prior things I had said, there may be no other options in terms of money. I don't know, like Tammy said, the wild card with Jared, they act like they were gonna strong arm him into doing it on the phone, and that sounded good, but he's still, somebody's gotta sign off for, quote, $29 million. And that'll buy us some time, but it won't, it's not the answer. Just like the millage, I mean, it's gonna take, we need the stars and the moon to line up right.
And again, the only reason they're offering this to Mexico Beach is the integrity of the data that we've been sending over.
Yeah, they did speak of that multiple times.
It gives them a source of comfort that what they're gonna get is gonna be, you know, as good as what we've been sending so far.
Before we look back to the borrowing of the money, and then we're meeting today, how will we'll just have a call meeting when we have something to talk about? That's the way we are, I mean, that's the way that'll be left.
We'll just do a special meeting when we hear something back.
Yeah, certainly, if it's time where staff has a recommendation of something to do on a real loan, yes, we're.
Yeah,
A meeting, a resolution, but there may be a meeting prior to that if there's a point where staff just needs to.
Have we supplied the insurance paper to the people that you suggested we get it to?
Yeah, your law firm, you've got that documentation.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right, so back on the enterprise funds, the budget we have incorporated the 9 cents and the 16 cents, and what's gonna happen if we get the roll back? I mean, we get something from the county.
Well, luckily, we don't approve the utility rates until September.
I mean, I'm saying, I'm fast forwarding.
Yeah.
I guess they won't let that happen. I guess the county won't let that
Yeah.
happen.
They're gonna let us know, I hope.
Okay, is there any other, Dan, you have anything?
Do not.
Jenny? Okay, anybody, anyone?
Mayor,
Go.
real quick, so you talked about streamlining processes before. Jean and I have been talking, and we had some conversations with Nick on Friday. We're looking at a better end-to-end solution. We've been looking at what's better for the property owners when they come into the building department. Right now, some cases, some of it's done by the building department, some of it's done by the city administrator, some is done by code enforcement, some is done by public works. Now that they actually have an engineer on staff overseeing the building department, Jean and I are putting our heads together and looking at what makes the most sense for our property owners when they come to the city, and what processes we can put in place that will streamline that, lower costs for the city, make it an easier process for the property owners. So we're just looking for your blessing to look at that and bring back a proposal to you guys from the building department. It might change our contract a little bit, but we think it'll make it a lot easier for the property owners.
More pleasant shopping experience, that's what we're looking for.
So if you guys are okay with that, Jean and I will be working, we're trying to put something in place before Andy comes on board, so he doesn't have to tackle that right out the gate, because we know that there's some opportunity for improvement there. So if you guys are comfortable with that, we can bring something to the next council meeting next Tuesday and give you a proposal.
Is that to add at least one more task under the building department?
Yeah,
One uniform
to
view?
do an end-to-end solution on those new construction, applications instead
I think that should be looked at. I salute you for tackling that, because it is fragmented
of, it is,
at best.
it is.
With well-intended, but still fragmented.
Yes. It's working well, but it requires us to stand on one leg and hold our tongue right and make it work well, so we're looking for a way to make it a better solution. Okay, we'll bring that back to you next Tuesday.
Anyone have anything? Anybody?
What's it?
We good? Motion for adjournment? Now, tomorrow, is it 1 or 2?
One.
1, and that's the only thing on the
The
agenda?
variance, and we added one more
There's
thing.
something else got added.
Two variances? Oh, there's 2
No, there
variances.
was a
No.
variance.
Just one.
Canal development order.
That's it.
There's a replat and a canal development order,
Oh,
Okay.
and we want to get that one in, so he can get started.
Okay.
Tanya, do you want me to